And we're recording again. Good afternoon, Ken. How are you?
Good afternoon, Fenton. How are you?
I'm doing well. Don't mock me. I'm sick. I'm trying not to wheeze. Okay.
Oh, come on.
So,
I'm an asthmatic. I wheeze anyway, so. But
have
you
a,
know what? It's a gorgeous day out today, so hopefully you can get some fresh air a little later.
thank you. Well, we've got some fresh air because we have an amazing guest today with, I can barely
Jeff.
speak because of the cough drop in my mouth. But we're going to get through this. Welcome to Products of Circumstance, everyone, the podcast with Ken Skeen and myself, Fenton Joseph. We discuss mental health and mindset matters through the lens of Black men. This show is unscripted, unfiltered, and mostly unedited. Mostly. We choose our topics randomly. But today we have an amazing guest who's going to join us for a wonderful conversation. Before we get into it, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. So I'm going to read a little bio here. Just to make sure that we cover all the points that our guest might want you to know about her, but she'll tell you a little bit about herself. Sabine Dieme Erlich, I hope I'm saying that right, is an emerging speaker who melds her deep personal triumph over trauma and her background in law enforcement to uplift others. Harnessing strength from both personal and professional realms, she passionately champions mental health and steers audiences towards healing. Through an authentic, approachable style, Sabine sheds light on resilience, offering transformative tools to drive positive change. Now, with the formal bio out of the way, I met Sabine during the clubhouse days of yesteryear when the dinosaurs still roamed the earth, if you all remember Clubhouse. And, one of the things that I believe in is building community off of platforms offline. So when I met people on Clubhouse, I would have conversations with them offline, on Zoom, telephone, whatever. And Sabine was one of those people that I connected with offline, and we definitely shared, a similar interest in like mental wellness and personal development. The Clubhouse room we were in was definitely people with a certain mindset, and so that was great to connect offline. And we're still connected, and so I know that during the past month of September, she was not promoting, but speaking on certain topics that definitely caught my ear, and so I asked her to be on the show and have a conversation with us. So let me introduce Sabine Dieme Erlich. Welcome to the show.
Welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
Pleasure to have you.
Am I
Yes,
pronouncing
yes,
your last name right?
you are perfectly DMA Erlich.
DMA.
Yeah,
I don't,
Okay.
yeah, May Ehrlich.
yeah, some people say DMA. It's easier, but DMA Erlich.
I love it. All right. So, one of the things that I've learned over time speaking to people is that your story, my story, your story, Ken's story, you can't tell the whole story, right? So we're not going to sit here on a half-hour conversation, whatever it is, and tell your whole story. But what's important is figuring out the parts of the story that are relevant to people, that'll resonate with them. What parts of the story you're comfortable telling. Sometimes I don't want to tell every single part of my story. It depends on who I'm talking to. So this is a show with two Black men. We're both married, we're both dads, and we've both done a lot of personal development work on ourselves, and we tell those sides of our story. So I'm curious to find out from you in your own words, what part of your story, you'd like to share today.
Yes. So I'm definitely happy that I can be here with you guys. And so the story, where does it start? I think it's kind of like when people ask you, tell me a little bit about yourself, and then you gotta try to like quickly come up with an idea of, something that sounds so, I guess, put together and
Yeah.
whatever. But this is an unscripted show, so here I
Just
go.
let
I
loose.
I think to start, okay, so my story. I will start by saying that I am a highly sensitive person, right? And um I think it took me a while to own that, but it's been something that I've known of myself for the longest, right? I've always been like super sensitive, and I thought that it was a weakness for a long time, especially, growing up the way that I did, and around many of the people that I grew up with. I'm Caribbean background. My family is from Haiti. And so growing up in church, growing up with my, in the community that I did, um, yeah, sensitivity was not a good thing. But I quickly realized in the time that I've been like doing the work of healing and going to therapy and even just reflecting on my days, and my time in law enforcement, that sensitivity is what made the difference in a lot of the encounters that I had, where I was able to reach people and really connect with them on a deeper level, especially in law enforcement. And so that's been like a great tool for me. But I really want to make sure I'm answering your question.
So
So
I,
No, you're
I'm
doing great. You're doing great.
I want to just point to something that I'm interested in. I guess on social media, you talk about trauma, and Ken and I talk a lot about trauma, stuff from our childhood in particular, because he and I we just be unpacking this stuff in real time. Like, oh my God, I never thought about that, Dad. Um, so I'm curious if you could unpack, a little bit about what it is that you talk about online.
yes. So, okay, I'll start with myself. Personally speaking, like many of us, unfortunately, we've had everything starts with childhood, right? And I had, some traumatic situations that happened in my childhood abuse of varying kinds and degrees. And it was buried for a very long time. Because again, growing up in a Caribbean household, also very much influenced by, we had a strong um, belief in God,
Mm,
and we were in church many times of the week, and so certain things were taboo. They still are
mm,
in in my family, and so although I kind of went through some things outside of the home, I must add,
mm,
certain things that unfortunately took place as a child.
mm,
I didn't have the opportunity to process those things,
mm,
and so they were buried deep down inside, and many years had passed by, and I think unconsciously I had the idea that, well, as long as I am, the good church girl that my parents raised me to be, then everything will be all right. And so again, I've never really thought that those things that happened in those earlier years would have affected me in any kind of way, because no one really knew about them. And so the coast was clear, right? Somehow along the way, about a year or so later, I find myself shortly after high school in the police department. I find myself working for, government. So I got this position in the police department, in local government, and eventually became an officer. All of this happening to me, all of these things, oh, well, not happening, but had already happened.
mm,
And then you have the baggage from childhood that still hasn't been unpacked. And so
right.
I'm carrying all of these, things throughout the years. And of course, therapy, it wasn't even like in first of all, mental health wasn't a buzzword yet.
Right.
Right.
Talking early mid 2000s, right? So mental health is not as big as it is today. And so of course, I'm just going along with my life, just trying to make it, and hopefully make my parents proud, which I know I already failed that, because I didn't become the nurse or the doctor
Mm,
that for.
mm,
Um, I had an interest in modeling, and then somehow, like I said, found myself in the public sector, and eventually became an officer. And a lot of things became full circle, when I myself started going on scenes where, I was getting calls for backup and to have support for young women who were just like me. I say all of that to say, in that time is when the real true healing started. And, I started seeking therapy. The police psychologist at the time and told me, you really need to, take the time that you need to essentially heal. And so it wasn't even really a choice of mine. It was something that was kind of put upon me, right, to start this healing process. But then, of course, it opened my eyes to, like, well, if I could go through all those things, become an officer and are not getting the help because they've maybe grew up in similar circumstances, as I did, and don't have anybody that they could turn to. And at that time, you should have had someone there available to help you process those things. And you know what? Maybe that didn't happen, but even if it's 5 years, 10 years later, you still can do the work that you need to get, the necessary healing. So I said a lot, but yeah,
No.
that's really the road that led me to where I am now, where I talk about mental health and trauma, um, in the way that comes natural and the way that I can, hoping or with the aspiration to help, others.
I want to circle back to, because my family's from Belize, with Central American, same as West Indian backgrounds, and families in that culture are, they our generation, and maybe later on, that keep it to yourself. Something bad happens, sweep it under the rug. Everything is taught to us to just sweep it under the rug, right? So you have generations of kids growing up to become adults that are really just scared children inside, that never got a chance to get through some of the trauma, a lot of trauma that they've been through in their lives. And now you're full grown adults, even raising children, let's say, but you still have that inner child that's still scared, still worried, still dealing with situations, or haven't even dealt with them yet. Like you were saying just now, you didn't get to really deal with your situations until you became a police officer, went through, then you finally got a chance to heal later on, so much later in life. So that our background has taught us to let it be, don't let it into public, you're going to embarrass the family. But now you have generations of children that are adults, like I said, that are dealing with it, that are dealing with this, uh I guess, this toxic belief that they maybe did something wrong.
Hmm.
And why, it happened to me because maybe I did something wrong. Did I put the wrong energy out there? um did I make it happen to me? M- uh and really, you're the victim. But
Right.
you people will make it seem, and you said it yourself, that um through the years you felt as if there was nothing wrong. The person's just here to help me. It took you said it took like a year. It took years of letting your guard down, and not even realizing that you were in the middle of a very
That's
toxic environment. um and I've seen on your profiles that you do talk about this a lot, and you're trying to get the word out, because if you tell your story, maybe someone, even one person, right? Fenton and I are on this podcast. If we can affect one person in a positive way and say, please just tell your story, and you know, get through these toxic ideas or toxic moments in your life, and you got to talk about them, right? Whether it to be someone, a friend, a family member, an expert. If we don't talk about them more often, instead of just sweeping it under the rug, it's not going to help others want to come out and talk also, because that's going to be the best way the um, to get the word out, to get a conversation going. Because if people don't have a conversation, they're gonna feel like they're alone, right? I'm sure. I'm assuming that there were years that you just felt alone.
for sure. And I will add to that sometimes, like, I guess holding things in is so normalized amongst our communities that sometimes it can be years later and you just feel like a heaviness and you don't even know why. You don't know why you're such in a bad mood or why you're not happy with life. I mean, there may be some external factors, but much of the time I found in my own journey that it's just those things that you've been kind of, I have a hard time saying burying. But anyway, so things that you just been carrying for so long, and you don't realize that heaviness that you're feeling. Yeah, there could be all sorts of things going on around you, but it's because of those things that you've been carrying, and you haven't unpacked yet, um, and that's why you feel that way. So yeah, I definitely felt, because no one that I knew had gone through something similar, at least so I thought. And so I had no one to really open up to about, those experiences.
Right. And we have, first of all, thank you for your generosity and your vulnerability. That needs to be said, first of all. And I'm glad that Ken and I had the good sense to not interrupt you. Just shut up and let people tell their story because it needs to be heard. Um, Ken and I both have rainbow babies. And, that's something that, he and I discovered. People don't talk about it. You think you're alone, right? Um, Ken, it wasn't until within the past year or so, like that we were talking and
Um,
realized that we
I
both
think
did.
it was probably like 4 or 5 months ago. It was very recent, 4 or 5 months ago. For the audience who don't know what a rainbow baby is, that's when you have one or multiple miscarriages, and finally your blessing comes healthy. That's what a rainbow baby is. But yeah, it was probably 4 or 5 months ago. We actually discussed it and realized, oh yeah, wait up, we both have rainbow babies. And then that episode, people really started commenting because no one talks about it.
No one talks about it,
God
and
forbid we talked about miscarriages.
right, this very this thing that happens, and it happens a lot. It happens all the time, and it causes people a lot of pain. And those painful things, we just And I have friends that shared with me their stories about like miscarriages. And one in particular, I'll never forget. I broke down, man, because I was like, I felt relieved, is what it was. I realized I was not the only person that went through it. You're going through this thing and you're going through it alone, and you've got so much inside of you, and you can't share it with anybody, or you feel that you can't. And then when she shared her story with me, I really think they were like tears of relief and joy that I'm not alone. Because being alone in something, I think, is what can be so destructive to people. But you can't have a conversation if no one talks. So again, thank you for your generosity. There's a couple things. There really are two worlds out there. We walk around every day. We get up, we put on our clothes, we go to work, we do whatever we do. People need to know that there's a whole other world out there. It's like a bizarro universe where there are horrible people doing horrible things in broad daylight at nighttime. Is a whole other world. And I would just encourage people not to be ignorant to that fact. I went to my wife yesterday, and I was like, what's the matter? Are you, how you feeling? And, it could just be pregnancy, stuff. But I was like, how you feeling? You don't look. And she said, I'm overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed. There's this and there's that. And I'm just thinking about a lot of stuff. And I said, doesn't it feel good to say it out loud and put a label on it and say, all right, this is what I'm feeling. And now I can compartmentalize it, address what needs to be addressed. But, when it's amorphous and you're just going through it, having that lack of structure, that's something that we try to change that with the conversations that Ken and I have on this show, is to give people a framework. You have to have some type of framework to deal with all this stuff that's going on inside of you.
I need to be intentional about addressing these issues, these experiences, lived experiences that I had that have never been um, addressed, never been addressed. And I think, yeah, this is really the reason why I love mental health, because it gives us, like you said, the framework. It gives us words, language that we may not have had growing up. Um, I can speak for myself when it comes to that. There's a lot of, these feelings that we have that we just don't know how to explain ourselves, just like your wife. She said she's overwhelmed. She felt overwhelmed. But I remember reading online where it says little kids, they won't know to say overwhelmed, or, I'm feeling whatever the case is. They're going to say my stomach hurts, and even as we get older, if we don't process, the things that have happened to us, anything that may have been traumatic, um, then we'll just project and, use different words, but not what truly speaks to the core of what we've been through, or what we're feeling in the moment. um, but yeah, he definitely helped. And what was key, the superior officer. What was key with him getting through to me is because it wasn't a one-time thing. So I had been he had been working, like I said, with the state attorney's office. He had been working for a few years at by this point, when everything kind of sort of blew up in my face professionally. He had been with the state attorney's office, and many times, on many occasions, he had, he was, closing out a case. And so he was making an arrest and he would call for backup. And of course, I knew him. And so I was more than happy to serve as his backup, to provide transportation or whatnot for the call. But I almost, and there's a lot of times we do things and we don't understand why we're doing them. So once I realized that he had been taking on these calls, every time he requested for backup, if I wasn't already on a call, I was rushing to those calls. It's just one of those things that make you say, look at God. He was at that time recently transferred to internal affairs. So now you have somebody that works in internal affairs. He said, now everything is starting to make sense. So he actually connected the dots for me. And he said, it makes perfect sense now that, like, on some level, you were going to these calls and backing me up on these calls, because you probably knew you had similar experiences to these girls we were essentially rescuing. And so he said, it makes so much sense to me now why you were so. He was like, all this time I thought you were just like maybe interested in going into investigations, but I think a large part of it was you kind of like searching for a framework. if
Right.
if you searching for something, to grasp, to relate to your own experiences, really what was the start of my healing journey.
Wow.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I wonder if people, how do I say this? I'm very happily married, and my wife and I have done a lot of work to get, to this place where we can just kind of be free of friction, I try to have frictionless communication, because you can have communication, arguments are communication, throwing things is a form of communication, but we've worked to have frictionless communication. And I think one of the things we're good at identifying is when we're kind of like starting to get into, a rut, so to speak. And I think we've gotten so good at it that whoever whoever feels it will just like be like, you know what, look, man, let's just talk about this thing. I'm sorry, I didn't mean like, I didn't mean to do this or do that. It wasn't like that. I didn't mean it this way, whatever. Like, let's not let this derail our week, our month, our summer, whatever. Let's just talk about it and figure out what we need to do to work through it. But that comes from experience, right? It comes from being in a funk and being like, man, like, we really don't even be talking. Like, why aren't we talking? Why won't you hug me? Why won't you kiss me? How come I don't feel like getting into bed with you? Like, why are we in this place? And having gone through that in the past, then you're like, oh, I know what that is. I heard a preacher say once, when he was a young believer, the devil would trip him up. It was like walking down the street on the sidewalk and somebody stick their leg out and just trip you up, right? But as he became older and wiser, now you look out and you see that foot sticking out from behind a bush a mile away, and the devil doesn't trip him up the same way. As we grow in our personal lives, we should be able to identify those things that tripped us up in the past and say, oh, I'm not falling for that trick again. And I think that's particularly important in marriage and relationships, but also for ourselves as we work on ourselves. Oh, this thing at work triggered me. Well, the last time I mouthed off, things didn't work out for me, or whatever it is. So, I guess my question to you, I always talk a lot before I come to my question, is what does it look like for you to kind of identify, when you feel yourself just not feeling it, like when you feel yourself, like you know, when you get that tickle in the back of your throat when you're about to have a cold, you know, and you just know, like, what does that look like for Sabine in your life? And it could be, you know, professionally, it could be, you know, like professional triggers, it could be stuff at home, like whatever.
So Fenton, I think I'm a lot like you that I guess when I feel those pain points, maybe I start talking. I start talking. I would love to say I journal, but it took me I journal now, but it took me a long time to get to a place where I felt like journaling was valuable, but I talk, and sometimes I'll talk, I don't want to say to myself, but I'll use, you know, even the audio app, you know, and I'll just start going through my day. So I guess like a audible journal,
Hmm.
you know, and just kind of like find a way to, you know, maybe the appointment with my therapist hasn't come around yet. And so I said, you know, let me just try to um, input some of those tools and you know, some of the same things that she would have me do in therapy with myself, and I'll talk it out, you know, and hopefully get to the source of whatever it is that's you know, triggering me or causing, you know, that heavy feeling or uncomfortable feeling. And usually in doing that, it helps to kind of diffuse the situation.
That's so good.
Um,
Ken, let
you.
me just say this real quick because I'm gonna
Mm.
forget. But I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. My mother-in-law tells me I should stop cutting Ken off. She was like, "You need to stop. You need to let him speak." Um,
Yeah, so I like journaling as well. It's something you just said. Thank you, mother-in-law. It's real quick. What you said, where you use audio. So we talk on here about journaling because I'm I'm on 5 hours sleep right now, four. So I was gonna forget. Hold on one sec. Then I actually send myself text messages. It's funny you said that. So I'll use the audio, which I do a lot with Fenton in the mornings. We always say good morning to each other, send each other like a little icon of coffee or something like that. Tell each other we love each other. You know, that's my dude right there. He's my boy. He's my brother. But I will use the audio text and text myself full paragraphs so I can read it later. Because I'm not, when we tell people on here to journal, the way I journal is just funny that you said that. That's crazy that you use the audio. So yeah, I will audio myself text messages daily just so I can read it later or I can write it down later in my journal. But that's what I got. I'm sorry. I was
No,
this
I wanted to ask you because I guess we relate in that way. So, books or Audible when it comes to
me
you?
Audible. Actually, I'm listening. I have about 34 minutes left of Matthew McConaughey's book, Green Light. Amazing book,
Okay.
by the way. And no, he's not promoting us to say that. Matthew McConaughey's
he
Green
sure
Light,
ain't. I haven't gotten
amazing.
paid yet.
Amazing book. Well, but Audible, I think I have like 127 books in my library right now.
Got it. Yeah. I'm like right behind you.
Yeah. Sorry, Fenton.
Yeah.
Cut you
About
off.
hearing, especially
Good.
an author, like the author that's narrating the story, that's even, I love it. I love it. Just to hear exactly how they would have wanted you to hear it means so much more than reading it off of a book. And a book is fine too because you're using more of your imagination. But yeah, I love to do that for myself and everything else.
Yeah, I mean, I'll pick up a book once. So don't get me wrong, if especially like on a road trip, if I'm not driving, which is rare, or definitely on a plane, I'll take a book. But I take an hour and 15 hour and a half drive each way to and from work,
Right.
5 days a week. So Audible is perfect. It just works perfect for me. A lot of motivational books, things like that. Nothing nonfiction, nothing fiction, always nonfiction, because there's just so much to learn out there. Nothing against people who read fiction or listen to fiction. It's nothing against you.
Harry
I
Potter
just
fans,
I
all these
prefer
whole Harry Potter
nonfiction. Yeah.
fans, they'll be all right. Um, I actually, first of all, Ken, that was super gangster. Second of all, I was actually very much in line with what you all are gonna say. What I do is I talk to myself. like you said, Sabine. I talk to myself, and I will stand here in my home, and I will work this whole thing out by myself sometimes, because the reality is, like, I'm super big on accountability. You know, I tell this story about how when I was a kid, I like broke the glass on the family car by accident, skipping stones. And my parents, they were watching me at the time that it happened, but I didn't know they were watching me. So I went to go tell them, you know, that the glass broke, and they were like, "What happened?" And I was like, "I was skipping the stones, da 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 da, and it broke. I'm sorry." And I was expecting a whooping because that's what time my pops was on, and he didn't whoop me. He said, "You know what, son? We saw you. You told the truth. Appreciate that. Go ahead, run along." And I was like, "This is amazing. Like, I'm still alive. All you got to do is tell the truth. It's great." You know, so I've been big on accountability. And so I always look at myself first, and I'm like, what part, you know, have I played in whatever issue it is that I'm dealing with? Obviously here at home, you know, but also even like professionally, you know, if something's going on with a client or whatever, it's like, well, what did I do? What do I need to change? I'm always looking at myself first. Always. I don't even bother with other people for the most part. For the most part. You know, if Ken and I ever got into something, we never do. If we ever got into something, I'm going to look at me first. I'm going to be like, what did I do to poor Ken to make him respond that way? Now, I don't have control over his responses. That's not my job. That doesn't mean that I can't look at myself. I could have said something a little softer, you know, said it a little differently, whatever. Was I being a jerk? Was it my tone? And so I'll be working stuff out. I'll be here crying all by myself, yelling, you know. It's good when my family's not here because I'm probably healing, you know. And then they come home and I'm like, "Baby, guess what? I'm healed." Like, it's not you. Give me a hug. Let's go to dinner. I'm fine.
Yes. No, I hear you. I mean, that process works great for me. I would love that it would work just as great. Well, obviously in a marriage, like you guys talked about, you and your wife got to a point where you sense it, right? But you guys probably how long have you been together, you and your wife?
Married 8 years, together 13.
I'm
Okay.
married 15 and a half years, together 18 and a half.
Oh wow. So you guys are y'all. So my husband and I, we last month made 4 years married, and we've been together 8 years.
Okay.
And I
That's
would
good.
love to say we got it figured out. We're still very new though, right?
4 years is new.
4 years is new, and especially in that 4 years, we've had two babies,
Right.
and so we're now at two under two. And so anyway, I bring this up because it's good and it's nice and fun, and I guess if you can figure it out for yourself, like how to kind of handle those triggers and everything, but then it's when you have to heal and also still um, you know, live with someone and
Yeah.
be married and parent and
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
all those things. So that's been a balancing act for sure. Um, but my husband, he's supportive. I will say he's definitely been supportive through the years, and he was really there for a lot of this healing process. He
Oh,
was there
wow.
very early, very early stages of this time that I'm sharing with you guys, where I've come to self-identify with the things that had happened. And so sometimes people support in various ways, and even just in speaking to you, I'm realizing how he's been supportive, very supportive of me, but it doesn't always look the way that I want.
Right.
you
Right.
know um but he's definitely held space for me to heal and to do what I need to do, to be right as a wife and even a mother now. So
That's
um,
good.
shout out
Listen,
to
it's a process.
DMA Ehrlich.
Shout out to her husband.
Definitely.
So
It's a process. Look, I'm 15 and a half years in now, and I'm not going to sit here and say we don't have arguments. Of course we do. Like you just said, right? We are two people living together. Forget marriage for a sec. Forget the ring. Forget that piece of paper that you sign, which is for your taxes mostly. Love is love,
you
right?
can't forget
Friendship
it.
is friendship, right? My wife is one of my best friends. Next to Fenton, of course. My wife is one of my best friends. At the same time, we're still roommates, raising four children with four different personalities, and the two older ones get new personalities every few months. But we're trying to we do it together. There are those days that we will have arguments or disagreements, whatever you want to call them. There's one thing that we live by that we do. I'm not going to sit here and say 100%. 98% of the time, even if we have a bad day or an argument or a disagreement, we go to bed. We still say "I love you," and we try to give each other still a kiss. Good night. I love you. Pissed at each other.
So we try.
Love you, babe. Good night. But still say I
That's
love you. Still say good night. Why? You are not promised to wake up in the morning,
that's
and
right.
that's not the way we want to leave each other.
That's right.
It's still a process. If you have that person in your life that can grow with you, um, doesn't have to understand everything about you. You don't have to understand your husband. He does not have to understand you 100%. It doesn't have to be that way, but as long as they can stand by your side and have your back, you guys aren't going to agree on everything. You're not supposed to agree on everything.
No.
But as long as you guys can have each other's back, most of the time, if not all, again, I'd be lying if I sit here and say it's all the time. Just today was what color curtain I ordered, and I ordered the beige one. She wants the white one. I'm like, all right, I'll return it. Whatever. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter as long as you got each other back for the real moments, right? The real moments that count as we grow. Because, like I said earlier in this conversation, we are just hurt children inside that are now adults, and now we're trying to figure out how to heal our past. So if you have that in your life, where you have that person, that spouse, that friend in your life that can help you grow, you're doing better than a lot of people.
Well, teach, Ken. Go ahead, brother.
I read it off the prompter. The teleprompter, it was on there.
This is somehow morphed into marriage counseling, but I think
It all bleeds. It really does.
I think that like the hard part, the work is creating the framework. And every couple's framework is going to be different. Everyone has to figure out how to communicate. But I promise you, the whole thing is all about communication. It's the entire thing. Everything else is so easy. It's opening up your mouths and speaking in a way. First of all, opening up your mouth and speaking. That's hard. And then two, doing it in a way that the other person can receive.
Right.
And the hard part about that is like dying to self. It's crushing your ego and saying it's not about how I want to communicate. It's how are they going to receive what it is that I have to say. Like, yes, I'm sorry, Fenton. You're going to have to package this thing up, this thought up, in a way that your wife can receive. You may have to put a bow on it. Okay. You might think, well, that's a lot of extra work, right? I don't want to be doing thing with the scissors and that's hard. I can never get the scissor thing right with the bow. But if I want my wife to receive this, that's how I'm gonna have to present it, and I have to do that work, and vice versa. And I'm telling you, once we got that out of the way, everything else is just super easy. I always say to my wife, like, we are so blessed. The only thing we ever worry about is making more money. It's like, how can we make more money to live a life that we really want to live? When it comes to marriage, parenting, all that stuff, I think we've cracked the code. I really do. And I know, Ken, I know you feel the same way, because it's not that hard. Just open your mouth. I think that's a good place to stop, maybe.
I think that's my line.
Sorry.
All right, that's a good place to wrap it up.
It really is. I'm at guys.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us and sharing your story. Absolutely, really appreciate you.
Yes, thank you for your generosity.
Thank you.
And we look forward to sharing this with as many people as possible because I know it's going to help somebody. We'll give you the final word. If you have anything that's going on, that's coming up that you want people to tune into or where they can find you, go ahead and let people know.
Yes, so you can find me at Sabine Dieme, and maybe Fenton will have it across the screen somewhere. We'll figure that out. But Sabine Dieme on really all platforms. That's my website, Instagram. Fairly new on TikTok, but yeah, Instagram, Facebook, all the things. YouTube, especially. Sabine Dieme. So, yep, that's it. Thank you for having me again.
Thank
Absolutely.
you. Pleasure is ours.
Fenton, do the thing.
Please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share with somebody on their personal development journey. We'll see you later.